what different acts you should go through in order to be confident in the examination or interview, whatever it is you require. All right.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
And we have very few classes left now after Holika. Holi festival, you know how many classes will be left? In such case, it is not possible to complete our syllabus. So ask your friends to join fast so that we can cover more and more topics every day. So let us start then. We have already discussed about the Prime Minister as per our Constitution, the powers, roles, responsibilities of the Prime Minister. Now you know that Prime Minister leads the Council of Ministers. So the Council of Ministers are appointed by the President on the advice of the Prime Minister. Normally, only members of Parliament are appointed as the ministers or the Council of Ministers. So the Council of Ministers consists of all categories of ministers, means these are cabinet ministers, Minister of State, then Minister of State, independent charges, deputy ministers, and parliamentary secretaries. So these all constitute the Council of Ministers, right? And it is not usual for the Cabinet and Council of Ministers to be confused with one another. So don't be confused by the Cabinet and the Council of Ministers. So the only similarity here is that they both report to the Prime Minister. There are other factors that make them different from each other. So let us see again from the Council of Ministers. So the formation and appointment of the Cabinet. So the Cabinet is composed of a small but important body of the senior leaders of the party who are included in the Council of Ministers. So as you know, the elections of UP and other states have been held, and the BJP in most of the state except Punjab, BJP is the largest party in all the states. So it is their responsibility to make Council of Ministers. So as I told, there are 4 different important positions like the Cabinet, the Minister of State, Deputy Minister, and parliamentary secretaries. So here you see the Cabinet is composed of small. So nowadays here we have limitation of the appointment of ministers. So only the senior leaders are usually appointed as the cabinet minister. They hold important portfolios like railways, defense, finance, etc. And they decide the major policies of the government. The cabinet takes important decisions which are communicated to the other ministers also. So it is the responsibility of the cabinet ministers to take important decisions relating to the governance. So the prime minister selects his senior and trustworthy colleagues and advises the president to appoint them as a cabinet minister. The president then appoints them as a ministers as per the advice of the prime minister. The term of the office, so usually the prime minister and the council of ministers are directly responsible to the Lok Sabha and can remain in office so long as they enjoy the majority support in the house. So in terms of assemblies, for the chief minister, you might have heard recently in Goa as well as Uttaranchal, as soon as they lose the confidence of the majority of the party leaders, they have to resign. So it is said the prime minister and the council of ministers are directly responsible to the Lok Sabha and can remain in the office so long as they enjoy the majority support in the house, means the Lok Sabha. The ministers swear that bear truth, faith and allegiance to the Constitution of India, uphold the sovereignty and integrity of India, and faithfully and consciously discharge their duties without fear or favor, action or will. So this kind of oath they take, and then they take over the charges. So when we talk about the powers and functions of the cabinet, then the powers and functions of the cabinet ministers, this include policy making. So the cabinet formulates both external and domestic policies of the government. So first policy making, and then second implementation of policies. So they make the policies and it is their responsibility to implement the policies also. So the business of the government is managed jointly by the Council of Ministers and the civil servants. The third function is to coordinate the functioning of the various ministers. So it is the cabinet which coordinates the working of the various departments for a smooth implementation of the government policies. And then earlier I have told major appointments. All major appointments, though made by the president, but are decided by the cabinet of the government. So when we talk about the features of the cabinet system, then the features are the president is the nominal head, although it is said that in the hierarchy, president is at the top, but he is the nominal head. And it is the responsibility of the cabinet or the council of ministers to make coordination between ministers and the parliament also. And the council of ministers is led by the prime minister and control of parliament over the executive. So the cabinet ministers, they goes about as head of the significant services of local government also. Defense Ministry, Home Ministry, Finance Ministry, and so on. Then there is the second part of the Council of Ministers are the Minister of State. So they can be either working under the Cabinet Minister or they may hold the independent charge of the different departments of the portfolios. So at the point when they join to be the bureau post, they work under the direction of the bureau priests. And there are deputy ministers also. So they are never given autonomous charge of service. So these are the four wings, we can say. Now, or the four positions. Now let us see, as per the different articles of the Constitution of India. So it is said that according to Article 74, there is to be Council of Ministers with the Prime Minister as the head. And he advises the President in exercise of the functions. The advice of the ministers cannot ordinarily be floated as parliamentary form of government, has been opted for in our country. So the advice of the Council of Ministers is binding on the President. So always remember that the advice of the Council of Ministers is binding on the President. He has to follow. So the acceptance of advice of the Council of Ministers by the President became mandatory, and it was no longer conventional. This clearly accorded portion of the ascendancy to the ministers. And once again, it is as per Article 74. And then Article 75 says the process of formation of Council of Ministers. So according to this article, the Prime Minister is to be appointed by the President and the other ministers are to be appointed on the advice of the Prime Minister by the President. So the Council of Ministers must be collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. It reflects the type of government India has opted for. And how they are appointed, from where they are appointed. So the ministers are normally to be the member of either of the two houses of parliament, Lok Sabha or Raj Sabha. Right? So it is upon the Prime Minister. He can advise the name of any of the member of Lok Sabha or the Raj Sabha to be inducted in his Council of Ministers. And these ministers hold office during the pleasure of the President. Just because they are collectively responsible to the Parliament and holding office during the President's pleasure are in fact contradictory. So they hold the office till the Lok Sabha or Lok Sabha is in action. If it is dissolved, this council is automatically dissolved. Now, once they are appointed by the Prime Minister, then what happens? Distribution of portfolios. So it is said that after constituting the Council of Ministers, it is the responsibility for the power of the Prime Minister to distribute portfolios among them. It is the Prime Minister who decides to whom a particular department is to be assigned. And those ministers who are holding a particular portfolio or who were holding the particular portfolio in the previous cabinet, usually they are again given the charges as their experience is to be, the benefit of experience is to be taken. So the basis of experience and standing in the party is the eligibility criteria to be for the induction in the Council of Ministers. So the cabinet and the ministry. So the creation of homogeneous ministry, distribution of portfolios among them according to their satisfaction and seeing to their smooth functioning are indeed a very tough task for a prime minister. So the personality of the prime minister and his standing in the party has a strong bearing on the performance of such tasks. So when we take example of Narendra Modi, he's strong enough. So he is handling this task in a very easy way. So all the cabinet ministers are members of the cabinet. The council of ministers are members, and the cabinet ministers hold comparatively more important portfolios than the state ministers or the deputy ministers. So deputy ministers are never given the independent charge, but some of the state ministers can be given charge of the independent portfolio. And secondly, the ministers of cabinet rank, though they are of the cabinet status, they are not members of the cabinet, the state of ministers. So they are the head of the various departments. They may attend the meeting of the Council of Ministers. And once again, I would like to repeat that the Council of Ministers are accountable to the Parliament, like Cabinet or the other ministers. They were to receive same salary, all the ministers receive same salary, either Cabinet or the Minister of State. So let us see the powers of the Council of Ministers. It is divided into three parts. First part is executive power, second is emergency power, and third is legislative power. So far as executive power is concerned, the Council of Ministers exercises all the powers of the President of India's executive functions. So as we know that the President has to work as per the advice of the Council of Ministers, and that is binding upon him. So all these powers are exercised by the Council of Ministers. The Cabinet develops the policies that will be presented to the Parliament for approval. Parliamentary approval for these measures, and then they implement them. It manages the union administration in accordance with the authorized policies. All government departments are coordinated, controlled by the cabinet or the prime minister. The cabinet is in charge of formulating foreign policy as well as domestic policies deemed important for the country's overall development. So the Council of Ministers is collectively responsible for Lok Sabha for all its policies and decisions. Any failure on any front would lead to the ministry's demise. So this is about the executive power. Now emergency power. The president always acts on the recommendation of the prime minister and his council of ministers when he exercises the emergency powers. And only with the cabinet approval may the president declare an emergency. So the president cannot decide when the emergency is to be imposed in the country. It is the cabinet who decides, advises to the president, and on advice of the Council of Ministers, president declares an emergency. So in the year 1976, emergency was imposed in India. So executive power, emergency power. The third power is legislative power. So despite the fact that the union's legislative powers are in the hand of parliament, I am repeating several times that the powers is in the hand of parliament. The Council of Ministers plays an essential role in the legislative policies. Ministers are the members of the parliament as well as head of the government ministries. They participate fully and actively in the legislative processes. They are the one who introduce and pilot the majority of bills. The parliament spends 95% of its time dealing with the government businesses, which is overseen by the ministers because the ministry has the backing of the majority of parliament. A measure that is not backed by the Council of Ministers cannot be passed. So if the Lok Sabha passes a bill that the Council of Ministers does not support or rejects a bill that the Council of Ministers supports or rejects the cabinet budget, so it is considered a vote of no confidence in the government and the whole Council of Ministers resigns. Okay, so the bills are placed in the parliament only. Once the parliament passes the bill, it becomes the act. So while doing so, the prime minister, cabinet minister might recommend to the president, and if there is no majority and they are not getting support from the parliament, in such case, the cabinet, the prime minister recommends to the president for the resolution of Lok Sabha. So this is legislative activity or the power. Now, they are naturally very much powerful. They are enjoying and exercising the executive powers also. So they have some responsibility also. So the responsibility of Council of Ministers. So here you see, number one, as I told earlier, the basic principle of parliamentary or cabinet form of government on the principle of collective responsibility. So the collective cabinet responsibility refers to the accepted conduct of government. Ministers, as a part of cabinet, they are collectively responsible for the parliament. So it is mentioned in the Article 75, subpart 3. So this says that, this states that the Council of Ministers is collectively responsible to the House of the people. And second is confidence of the House. So a government can remain in office for so long as it retains the confidence of the House of people. So the confidence which can be assumed unless and until proven otherwise by a confidence vote. So if a decision of a particular ministry on the policy matter is defeated in Lok Sabha, it is not the minister to resign, but the whole cabinet will resign, or the whole council of ministers has to resign. So they are collectively responsible. It is not the responsibility of an individual minister. So the council of ministers sink or swims together. It stands or falls together. Here you can say that the individual minister may have differences among themselves on certain issues, but once a decision is taken by the cabinet, it becomes joint decision. There may be difference of opinion among themselves, but once decision is taken by the cabinet, it becomes the joint decision of all the ministers. Now it is the duty of each and every minister to stand by it and support it in parliament as well as outside the parliament. And if any minister disagrees with the cabinet decision and is not prepared to defend it, he must resign. So there is an example, our policy maker, our constitution maker framework, B.R. Ambedkar in 1953. He has resigned due to disagreement with his colleagues over the Hindu Code Bill. And then again, due to his objection to the Muslim women protection of rights on divorce Act of 1986, Arif Muhammad Khan has also resigned. So here we discussed collectively responsibility. Now you see the individual responsibility. So here you can say that though the ministers are collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha, they shall be individually responsible to the head of the state, means the president. So here Article 75(2) declares that the minister shall be liable to be removed by the president at any time. However, since the president has to act on the advice of the prime minister, in practice this power is exercised by the prime minister only. Either prime minister asks the minister to resign or can advise the president to drop any of the minister. So far as legal responsibility, the system of legal responsibility is not prescribed in the Indian Constitution. So they don't have any legal responsibility. So in India, an order of the president for a public act should be countersigned by a minister. It is left to the president to make rules as to how his orders are to be authenticated. Here we have some difference with in India and UK. So in the UK, the monarch cannot do any public act without the counter signature of the ministers. Who is legally responsible for that? This is a difference in India and Britain. So if the act violates the law, the minister is responsible in the court of law. It happens in UK, but in India, there is no such legal responsibility. And further, the court are barred from inquiring into the nature of advice rendered by the ministers because there is no legal responsibility. So here, this is all about the Council of Ministers. So as I said, that you should not be confused with the Cabinet and the Council of Ministers. So here, you just see what is the difference between the Cabinet and the Council of Ministers. So let us see. The Cabinet. The Cabinet consists of only the senior ministers, okay, who hold the important portfolios such as defense, home affairs, civil aviation, HRD, finance, etc. But when you talk about the Council of Ministers, this consists of cabinet ministers, minister of states, deputy minister, and parliamentary secretaries. Okay. So the Council of Ministers includes cabinet ministers, minister of state, minister of state independent charges, deputy ministers, and the minister parliamentary affairs. Now the cabinet. It was conferred the status of constitutional body after the passing of Constitutional Amendment 1978. But the Council of Ministers is the constitutional body. The cabinet. The cabinet consists of some of the most experienced ministers. Thus, the Prime Minister seeks their advice on important matters. The decisions of the cabinet are binding to all the ministers. But so far as Council of Ministers is concerned, it is up to the Prime Minister to consult with the Council of Ministers or not when it comes to making important decisions. The cabinet enforces the collective responsibility of the council to its members. Here, the Council of Ministers collective responsibility to the lower house of the parliament. The cabinet ministers meet very frequently, and usually once a week, to formulate policy and to decide on certain matters of national importance. But the meetings of the Council of Ministers is very rare. The size of the minister is limited, 12% of the total strength of the house. But the Council of Ministers usually consists of 60 to 70 ministers from the government. So these are the difference between the cabinet and the Council of Ministers. So let us see how many people are there in our meeting. Only 51. Download attendance list. Downloading. One file was downloaded and one file is still okay. Done. So just anyone, Shashwat? We'll have our quiz just after the Holi festival. Okay, Shashwat? Hello, Shubham?
Yes,
Okay, Aspal. So what is the status of quizzes in other sections? Hmm?
subject or section.
For this Constitution of India?
Sir,
How many quizzes have been already conducted in this paper or the other papers also? In other groups, in other sections?
mostly 2 or 3.
Mostly 2 or 3. And in our group, we have only single quiz. So what do you want? When you want your second quiz? Hmm?
After Holi.
After Holi. Okay. So after Holi means 20th is Sunday, 21st, 22nd. Are you ready for a quiz on 22nd or any other day also? We have already missed 2 or 3 classes due to my personal engagements. Hmm? And anyhow, we have to cover the classes. So just tell me, it will be organized in the scheduled classes or we can organize it anytime, any day. Hmm? So what do you want? So okay, it will be after Holi. So we will organize 22, 24th. 24th will be the second quiz. Okay. By that time, we can cover 2 more topics. Okay.
Yes, sir.
We will try to finish the second module. And the second quiz will be from second module. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Chalo, ठीक है. So we can leave now.
Yes, sir.